What celebrities have you encountered that were either really nice or really horrible? Story 1. I ran into Adam Sandler outside of a Planet Fitness in Brooklyn in early 2016. As I was leaving the Planet Fitness, it looked like he was walking in. We made eye contact, so I stopped and held the door for him. He got to the door and stopped right before he walked through, in one of those fake poses that little kids make when you tell them to freeze. I stood there holding the door, plenty confused. For about 5 seconds, we just stood there, motionless, and I, standing there holding the door. Finally, he turned his head and said in the stereotypical Adam Sandler voice, who are you kidding? I'm not going in there. Giant grin on his face. We both laughed, and then he continued down the street. Awesome. Have you guys ever noticed that, Adam Sandler just wears the most oversized clothes ever? It's amazing. That guy just does not care. That guy probably has, 50 mil in the bank, and this guy be wearing the baggiest jeans. Story 2. I met John Candy on a plane when I was a little kid while traveling with my family. He was a big man. He had the whole row to himself in front of us with the armrest up between the seats so he could be more comfortable. The stewardesses were blocking anyone from coming up and bothering him, even though they weren't exactly leaving him alone either, with them always talking to him constantly and laughing at his enjoyable banter the whole trip. At some point, he got up to go to the bathroom. On his way back, as he passed our row to get to his, he looked at me and pretended to do a double take, like he was surprised. He said, "Hey, you're the quietest kid ever. Don't you talk?" The way he said it was so friendly that I just smiled and giggled. Then he had a pleasant conversation with my parents, who had been dying to talk to him the entire flight, but were too polite to bother him. 2 weeks later, we heard he had passed away. Story 3. My mom spotted Robin Williams once and she went up to him and asked if she could get a quick photo. She didn't realize he was there in the middle or about to do something with the Make-A-Wish Foundation. So she waited until they were done around 20-30 minutes later, and then a bunch of the kids and people wanted photos with him. He made it a point to stick around and told his staff, "I think that woman wanted a photo," and made sure she got it. Mom was thrilled. He was such a humble, nice dude. Man, it's so sad. I know this was a while ago, but rest in peace, Robin Williams. Story 4. I was working in a little boutique store in Seattle with my girlfriend, and it was a particularly slow day when all of a sudden, Robin Williams walks through the door. He was the only one in the store, and my girlfriend didn't know who he was. We left him alone, and when he came up to purchase his things, he started barking at my Boston Terrier in a cute way. It scared the crap out of my Boston Terrier, and he started barking back at Robin. He was so genuine and nice, and I really do remember how hairy his arms were. For some reason, that really stuck out. He walked out the door and instantly was surrounded by a bunch of tourists trying to take pictures of him. He puts his bags in the back of his Mini Cooper and drove off. He bought a little piece of artwork and 3 Gordon Bro hats. How do you not know who Robin Williams is? Who is this? Why are you dating this person? Story 5. I met Paul Rudd on a flight from New York. Sat next to him on the plane. My buddy leaned over and told me that he wanted to compliment him on this band shirt he wore when making Clueless. But he didn't want it to be weird, so his solution was to write him a note and slip it to him. So he does this. And Paul just gets this nervous look on his face, opens the note and reads it. Starts cracking up, laughing, leaned over to us and said, "Best note ever." He then told us the whole story of the shirt. How he fought with the costume department about it because it was the shirt he wore to the set that day. We talked the whole flight. Dude, it was super cool. Story 6. My mom and my sister met The Rock when he was still a wrestler. They had a couple of car seats and tons of bags, having a hell of a time getting off the plane. And people were waiting, and then this massive guy offered to carry some things for them, and they happily took the help. He grabbed some bags and held the baby carrier with my niece in it and helped them off the plane and left. After people kept going up to them asking how they knew The Rock, they were confused until someone explained who he was. Story 8. I met Vin Diesel at a truck stop diner when I was a kid. It was like 4 in the morning, and me, my grandpa, and Vin and his friend were the only ones in the diner, and we ended up getting sat at the table next to them. Vin and a friend were getting ready to go on some fishing trip, which was made obvious by the clothes they were wearing. My grandpa struck up a conversation about fishing with him, completely oblivious to who he was. He was a really nice guy and apparently knew a great deal about fishing techniques. I was a bit geeked out and didn't say much or contribute to the conversation, but I spent the next hour of our road trip explaining to my grandpa who Vin Diesel was and why it was a huge deal we met him. If you really think about it, what are the odds you just meet Vin Diesel at a random diner? It's really crazy how these things happen. It's one thing to meet a celebrity in a LA mall. That's just to be expected, that's not really a surprise. Story 9. When I was a teenager, I met Neil Armstrong at a retirement ceremony that my dad brought me to. It was at a museum and it was a private event. There was time for everyone to wander the museum, and my dad saw Mr. Armstrong looking at one of the planes that my dad helped design. Nobody else around. They struck up a conversation and Neil asked me questions about what I was studying and how I felt about the work my dad did. My dad worked on classified planes when I was much younger. He seemed like such a gentle guy to me. A bunch of other men joined and started asking him for autographs, which he declined. It seemed to snap him out of his happy mood, and he kind of shut down and walked away. At that time, I thought he was a bit of a jerk for not saying goodbye or anything, but I recently read about the hard time he had with fame. I guess it makes sense. Story 10. I was a server for Tom Cruise. Pretty cool dude, to be honest. Was a bit of odd touch, but that's to be expected. The funny part was he didn't know what he could order off our menu, so he had to call his nutritionist to find out what he could get. Ended up getting fried chicken. Story 11. Met Matthew Lillard, his wife, and newborn daughter, like literally after the release of the first Scooby-Doo movie. My family always hosts 4th of July parties at our beach house, and he party crashed. I was like 7 or 8 at the time, and my cousins were freaking out saying, "Shaggy's here!" Of course, I immediately sprinted over, and he was eating a hot dog. Super cliche, I know, since it's 4th of July. It was so cool. The whole time he was in character and offering me to have him go get a hot dog for me. I remember my little cousins asking where Scooby was at, and he replied, "Oh, Scoobs ate so many hot dogs that he's like having a food coma." Seriously, one of the most highlighted memory dating back to my youth. Story 12. Years ago, working hotel security in Edmonton, I was escorting Dolly Parton and Kenny Rogers at 0400 in the elevator down from their rooms to the lobby to get in their airport limo. I am 6'5", and so I towered over her. Dolly looked me up and down and said in her cute southern drawl, "They sure growing big up here in Canada." She was just as sweet as you could imagine. Kenny, on the other hand, I feel bad for saying this, due to his recent passing, treated me like the help, which I of course was, and even made a huffy, impatient noise when, slightly flustered by Dolly's remark, I struggled to find the key to put the elevator into independent service. Dolly touched my arm, licked me in the eye, and said, "Darling, don't you pay him any attention. He appreciates y'all." I guess I got the good and the bad in one shot. Story 13. I met a few celebrities working as an event photographer for fundraisers from time to time. Chevy Chase, well, the stories are true. He was a huge jerk. Jamie Lee Curtis, on the other hand, though, was one of the sweetest people I've ever met. Bar none, and easily the nicest celebrity I met working the camera. Very considerate and thoughtful person. She kept checking with us to see if she could do anything for us, or if we needed any more shots she could help with. Great sense of humor, too. Story 14. When my dad was about 9, 1964-ish, he was on a plane from LA to Heathrow in coach with his mom. The stewardess came back and excitedly asked him if he wanted to meet a Beatle. My dad said sure, but he didn't really know the Beatles at that age, and only said yes because that's kind of what you do at that age. He sat on the couch next to George. Different time. Airlines treated you like people. George folds up his newspaper and says, "So, do you like my music?" My dad says, like a confused 10-year-old, "Oh, no." Apparently George smiled and went back to read his newspaper. My dad sat there like a doofus for like 5 to 10 minutes until the stewardess came and got him. So George Harrison was cool to children, and my dad's the most stone-cold 10-year-old ever. Story 15. I hung out for an hour or so with Kiefer Sutherland. It was an amazing coincidence running into him as we had plans to go see him at the concert the coming Saturday night. Tickets were free, but you had to stand in line to get them. My son was bartending. I came in to see my son, and he said, "Hey Dad, I got someone I want you to meet." So when I met him, the first thing out of my mouth was, "Oh my goodness, we loved you in Lost Boys in 24, and so much. And believe it or not, my wife and I are coming to see your band on Saturday." He lost it. He was like, "Most people don't have a clue about my music. Can't believe you guys are coming. That's so awesome." Yeah, he was thrilled. So I called my wife. Then she swung by the bar, too, to meet Kiefer. Long story short, he left really great seats for us at the will call. Then during the concert, he called out for my wife and me to stand up. Then he dedicated a love song to us. He's a good dude. Oh, God, I thought that was going to take a bad turn for a second when he said, "Oh, he called out for my wife." Oh, no. Can you imagine? Like, just this cool dude, and then boom, just like, "Oh, the wife come up." Not you, only the wife. And, next thing you know, he's getting cheated on during the concert. Yep, this is where my brain goes. Not to get off topic, but this actually has happened before. This guy was a huge fan of this YouTuber. The YouTuber comes to his house and then makes out his wife. If anyone can comment what I'm referring to, you are a YouTube legend. Story 16. Bumped into Gordon Ramsay in the lift in a hotel in Hong Kong. He was very friendly. We didn't talk to him or ask for a picture. I just blurted out, "You're Gordon Ramsay." And he acknowledged and smiled. He insisted on us going first because we had our suitcase with us, wished us a nice day, said bye several times when we saw him in the lobby again. Very friendly. Story 17. Nearly 20 years ago, I literally bumped into Mick Foley at Six Flags in NJ. I was walking backwards down the exit ramp from a ride while talking to some friends, and he was being escorted up the exit ramp with his kids to skip the line. My dumb head never saw them coming, and I backed right up into him. Dude was super cool about it. He just called me, gave me a pat on the back when I apologized, and said, "No problem, dude. Have a nice day." And then I realized who it was, and he was walking away. My jaw dropped, and one of my buddies just looked at me and said, "Did mankind just tell you to have a nice day?" Story 18. Met Peter Cullen, voice of Optimus Prime and Eeyore, at BotCon in 2012. They had a raffle system set up for autographs / meets and greets. He saw a bunch of us standing off to the side, including a man next to me who was sobbing because Peter meant so much to him. Peter full on ran from the line he was supposed to be autographing and bear hugged this guy for at least a solid minute, patting his back and saying, "It's alright, everything's okay, I'm here now," while the guy sobbed on him. Then Peter autographed all our memorabilia and was whisked away by some very angry constaff. Wonderful, wonderful man. Class act and generally kind. Story 19. I was working on a set once where John C. Reilly acted as one of the main characters. It was a pretty small set and low budget, not even sure if the show even aired, so we all found ourselves working closely together for the most part. I sat across from him during lunch one day. We chatted for a bit about random stuff. The guy talks the way he acts, which is why I think he plays such a great character in any comedy, because he quite literally plays his own attitude in many roles. At least it seems. But anyway, he was a very nice and down-to-earth guy. I found it hard not to giggle every time he spoke, because I just couldn't shake the image in my head of all the roles he's played. Story 20. I had the chance to work with Whitney Houston for 8 days on a film set. I was working as an extra. She was nice, kind, and personable. Her beauty was more striking in person. She was very professional. She did not miss a mark or a cue. Everybody on the set cried when she sang. Whitney Houston was very nice to me and complimentary. She spoke sweetly in a motherly tone when she greeted people. I can still remember her friendly greetings when she arrived on set every day. That was one of the best experiences of my life and best experiences working on a film set. I learned a lot from her about professionalism on a film set. I also saw how hard she worked. She was there 12 hours a day and on point every minute. I watched how she interacted with the director, other actors, and crew. She was even encouraging to other actors and performers in the film, even the extras. It was heartbreaking when she passed. I still have the dress that I wore in that film. She admired and complimented me about the dress. An actor / musician I know is booked to perform at the event. Whitney Houston was to be at the day she passed. He was also staying at the same hotel. He called me and told me she was gone. Then he started to cry. Story 21. Bill Nye. Horrible. I took a group of high school students to an engineering fair at University of Illinois in 2001. Bill was a special guest. This was a big deal for my students as he was the inspiration to pursue science. My student made a t-shirt that she wanted to get signed by him if she got the chance. We drove 4 hours to get there, walked around and viewed the projects that were on display, and watched some battle bot competitions. On our last walkthrough, here comes Bill down the hallway. I nudged my student to go ask for an autograph. She told him that he was a huge inspiration and asked if he would sign her shirt. He said that he did not appreciate that she was interrupting his walk. She showed him the shirt. He rolled his eyes, scribbled on the shirt, and tossed it to her. She looked like she was going to cry. Instead, she walked over to the garbage can and threw it away. He said, whatever, and went back to looking at the projects. I'm so confused. So if I'm getting this right, this guy was just walking through a hallway and said he didn't appreciate this person stopping him on his walk? That just seems like a very, snobby thing to say, you know? I'm sure people don't like to be interrupted, but, geez. You know how many people I've had interrupt me at the gym when I have my earbuds in? I'm not like, oh, I don't appreciate this, you know? I just kind of like, hey, I'm working out, it's alright. That is a pretty nasty interaction. Story 22. Ewan McGregor accidentally ran over my boyfriend's foot a couple of years ago when he was filming his Long Way Around series. He was absolutely lovely though. My boyfriend loves bikes, so he's over the moon. Bless him. Apparently they talked about his GS for a couple of minutes together. Apparently it's one of his favorite memories. He had to restrain himself a little from roasting the GS as they were notorious for their unreliability. Story 23. Ringo Starr likes this restaurant by my house. I've run into him a few times while I'm up there. If he's with someone else, then he's bearable. There is thus one time, though, I was with a friend and he exited the restaurant with his wife. My friend saw who he was and looked shocked. He just looked in our direction and said, "Yes, it is I," and drove off. We were then informed by the valet guy a few feet away that we got lucky, and because some older folks were nearby. In short, Ringo is a salty man. I'm a little confused with this story. He says this person's salty, but am I missing something? I don't really get any salty vibes from this. Story 24. After college, I was living the intern life in New York, so I had to hunt around for a job that would be fine with me working just evenings. The first call I got was Kmart, so for about a month, I worked at Kmart Penn Station. One night, this guy was with his hat pulled down low, and this really cheerful girl came into the electronics department where I worked. It was wild store with a ton of sketchy characters, so right away I was wary of him. Anyhow, they looked at the game selection for a minute. Then the girl asked me if they could get Madden 2013. I obliged, took it from the case, and began cashing them out. It was over the $50 minimum where I had to ask for ID with a credit card purchase. So I asked the sketchy fella for his ID. He told me in his hushed low voice that he didn't have it with him. So I called up security to get the okay to finish up the transaction. As I'm talking to them, he tilts the credit card towards me. My first thought is, I know JP Morgan made a credit card. And then I looked at the name. Daniel Radcliffe. His girlfriend was beaming at me as the expected recognition washed over my dumb, tired face. He was super gracious, and my height, which I loved even more, were both a firm 5'5". And I was pleased to be so calm and collected about the whole thing that they both got out of there without anyone else knowing who he was. Alright, when's the last time we heard of a Kmart, though? I know it's a little bit off topic, but I can't remember the last time I've even been in a... Is Kmart still around? I swear it's been like 10 years, hasn't it? Damn, that's an old story, isn't it? Story 25. For a couple of years, I went to a private school in Connecticut. My last year there, Bill Murray's son transferred in. Neither was in my grade, but one of them was in the play with me. I was super nervous, but I was an SNL fan my whole life and had the 20th anniversary book that talked about all the cast members and behind the scenes stuff. After the show, me being really shy, I said hi and told him I was a fan and asked him to sign it. He said, wow, I haven't even seen this yet. Cool. And then told the biggest lie ever told and said I was good in the show. I was awful. I forgot all my lines. Weirdly, this wasn't the first time I saw him. When I was about 6, we were at a restaurant in New Jersey, and he and his wife were at another table. Ghostbusters had just come out, and I wanted to say hi, but my parents stopped me. Nice dude. Story 26. Zac Efron was a douche when I met him, but it was during his high school musical days, and he was just a kid then, so who knows what he's really like now. Justin Timberlake is exactly the same guy you see on TV. That's a real southern boy right there. Alex Trebek is just all around cool dude. Mark Harmon is awkward, but his wife is adorable. Maria Bello is a super rude and snotty. Hope to never see her again. Pierce Brosnan, you know who you did, F you a-hole. See, I'm a little confused with this one. You're telling me this person met all these celebrities? I'm calling cap on this story. It's a cap story. We need to know, like, what this person does. This person, we need to know some more context. Like, do you live in LA? Do you work, like, on movie sets? Like, what's going on with this? Story 27. Drake Bell came to my college last year and sang/played guitar. He was big when most of us were grade schoolers, but he does next to nothing now. His musical skills weren't bad, but he did a terrible show because he said nothing between songs. Despite the fact that he's now touring small rural colleges, he was a royal jerk to us. Story 28. Zac Efron is the nicest guy in the world. I met him at a New Year's house party in LA. I asked him about his workout resume for the movie Neighbors, and he was so happy to talk to me. I honestly felt so comfortable talking to him, I could have asked him to get me a drink at the bar, and I think he would have done it. In the end, I told him he was the nicest celebrity I've ever met. He looked at me and said, hey man, real recognizes real. Alright, is that just me, or is like, that's like, I felt the coolness from that. I was like, oh, if he said that to me, I think I would cry. I'd be like, dude, I love you. I'm just kidding. Joke. But yeah, this just kind of goes to show, like, you know, age really doesn't make a huge difference. You know, I think it's really dumb to think someone is an a-hole because they did something when they were 18 and now they're like 30. I know we'll never understand those kind of arguments.